After years of driving taxis in Albuquerque, each day blending into the next in an endless parade of fares and tips, Charlie's life changed forever when a blind girl in a bright pink dress crossed paths with him during his shift. Something about her made his blood run cold. Where her eyes should have been, there was only smooth skin, her guidance cane tapping gently against the concrete in the scorching heat. The quiet confession that followed would shake Charlie to his core, words he never imagined hearing from such an innocent child. Comment below where you're watching from today, and if you like this shocking story, don't forget to subscribe. The sweltering summer afternoon blanketed Albuquerque in an oppressive heat, with waves visibly rippling above the asphalt. The streets were unusually quiet as most people sought refuge indoors from the relentless temperature, creating an almost ghost town atmosphere in certain areas. For Charlie, a taxi driver in his mid-50s, the sparse traffic made for easier navigation, but intensified the stifling heat in his cab. Just 3 hours into his shift, Charlie had already served 5 customers, an unusually good run for such a scorching day when most people avoided walking outside. The steady ticking of the meter brought a small sense of satisfaction as he ferried his 6th fare, but the oppressive heat sapped the joy from his success. Wiping the sweat from his brow with a handkerchief, he felt it dampen immediately, a testament to the sweltering day. A family of 4 occupied his cab, parents in front and back with 2 children in the rear seats. The little ones chattered endlessly, exchanging jokes and laughter that filled the cab's interior. Charlie maintained his professional distance, his ears trained through decades of service to hear without listening, a skill honed during his years as a high-end chauffeur. As he navigated toward their destination, a towering family resort at the end of the street, Charlie's mind drifted to his previous career. He recalled the pristine limousine he once drove through affluent neighborhoods, serving as a private chauffeur to a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. The memory carried both pride and pain, reminding him of his dramatic fall from that position of trust and prestige. His thoughts lingered on the stupid act that cost him everything, secretly driving his employer's lonely, homeschooled 10-year-old son to a local playground. The boy, isolated by his father's strict educational regime, had found friendship with neighborhood children during these clandestine trips. Charlie had continued these secret excursions multiple times a week, watching the child's happiness grow until his father eventually discovered their arrangement. Charlie remembered the day it all came crashing down. The CEO's fury had been palpable, his face red with anger as he accused Charlie of endangering his son and betraying his trust. No amount of explanation about the boy's need for socialization or Charlie's good intentions could sway the man. The dismissal had been swift and final, forcing Charlie into his current position as a taxi driver. Charlie pulled his taxi to a smooth stop at the resort's grand lobby entrance and pushed away the bitter memories. He focused on the present, on the family in his cab, and on completing this fare with the professionalism he still prided himself on maintaining. The meter clicked to a stop, and Charlie prepared to conclude another successful ride in his new, humbler career. The fare meter displaying $27. The towering resort structure loomed above them, its modern glass facade reflecting the harsh afternoon sun. The father, sitting in the front passenger seat, reached for his wallet while the mother helped gather their children's scattered belongings. The father, clearly a tourist from his manner and dress, presented a crisp $100 bill for the $27 fare. The pristine condition of the bill caught Charlie's attention. It was clearly new, likely just withdrawn from a money changer of bank. Charlie checked his own wallet, already knowing he lacked sufficient change for such a large bill. He felt a twinge of frustration, realizing this simple fare was about to become more complicated. "I'm sorry, sir," Charlie said, turning to face the father. "I don't have enough change for 100. Is there any chance you have something smaller?" The father shook his head apologetically. "I'm afraid not. We just got into town and haven't had a chance to break any bills yet." Charlie suggested the guests check inside for change while he waited in his idling cab. He watched through his windshield as the father approached the hotel's check-in counter, only to return moments later with no success. The valet, when asked, also shook his head. No cash transactions allowed. Feeling the pressure of time ticking away, Charlie offered an alternative. "How about payment by debit card? I can process that right here." The father declined, explaining about currency conversion issues. The family stood uncertain in the lobby entrance, their luggage creating a small island around them as they discussed options. Charlie could see the parents' growing discomfort and the children's impatience. Eyeing the time and feeling the pressure of his waiting cab, Charlie proposed a solution. "Look, how about this? I'll take the $100 bill, find change at a nearby store and return it to the hotel within a few hours. Would that work for you?" The father, showing admirable caution, insisted on recording every possible detail: Charlie's taxi number, complete driver ID, full name, and personal contact information. Charlie complied patiently, understanding their need for security in this arrangement. He recited his information clearly, watching as the father meticulously noted everything in his phone. As the family finally moved toward the hotel entrance, Charlie stuffed the $100 bill into his wallet with a quiet grumble. He planned a quick trip to the convenience store just a block away, a swift fix to their shared dilemma. The valet gave him a knowing nod as he pulled away from the resort entrance. Navigating the short distance, Charlie allowed himself a fleeting moment of self-assurance. This minor detour would be handled quickly, and he'd be back on track ready to pick up the next fare to hit his daily target. Charlie parked his taxi in the convenience store's small lot, positioning it for a quick return to the resort. The store's fluorescent sign buzzed in the afternoon heat, promising air-conditioned relief inside. However, before he could reach the entrance, an unusual sight stopped him in his tracks. A young girl stood alone near the store's entrance, her presence immediately striking for several reasons. Her bright pink dress stood out vibrantly against the dull concrete surroundings, and her dark skin contrasted with her neatly braided hair. She moved carefully with a white cane, but something about her appearance seemed off. As Charlie drew closer, he noticed the most unsettling aspect of her appearance. Where her eyes should be, there was only smooth skin covering the upper portion of her face. It was as if the eye sockets themselves were never formed, creating an uncanny appearance that momentarily froze him in place. Charlie felt an immediate conflict between his desire to maintain professional distance and a tugging concern for this clearly vulnerable child. The sight both repelled and compelled him, stirring memories of his past choice to help another child in need. He hesitated, torn between walking past to complete his errand and approaching to ensure the girl's safety. Despite his unease, Charlie stepped closer to the girl. He kept his voice gentle but firm as he asked, "Hello there, are you all right? Where are you headed?" The girl turned her face towards his voice, her expression unreadable due to her lack of eyes. "Home," she replied simply, her voice small but clear. Charlie pressed further, trying to mask his discomfort at her unusual appearance. "And where is home? Are your parents nearby?" "Far away, sir," the girl added, her voice carrying a peculiar mix of innocence and determination that further piqued Charlie's curiosity. The heat bore down on them both as Charlie squatted next to her and waited for her to elaborate, but no further explanation came. He glanced around, hoping to spot an adult who might be responsible for her, but the area around the store remained deserted in the oppressive afternoon heat. Charlie found himself at a crossroads. His errand to get change suddenly seemed insignificant compared to the potential danger this young, disabled girl faced alone on the streets of Albuquerque. Yet he was acutely aware of his own vulnerability. A middle-aged man approaching a lone child could easily be misinterpreted. As he stood there, weighing his options, the girl shifted her weight, her cane tapping gently against the concrete. The sound seemed to echo in the quiet parking lot, a reminder of her vulnerability and Charlie's moral dilemma. With a deep breath, he made his decision, hoping he wouldn't regret getting involved once again in a child's welfare. Recognizing the need for a gentler approach, Charlie softened his tone. "See, "My name's Charlie, what's yours?" he offered, attempting to establish trust. The girl responded with equal softness, introducing herself as Zuri. The heat continued to press down on them as they stood outside the store, making the interaction more challenging. "Zuri, I'm a taxi driver," Charlie explained his role, hoping this information might make her more willing to share details about her destination. He emphasized his ability to drive her wherever she needed to go, if only she'd provide an address or location. At the word drive, Zuri's demeanor shifted slightly, but she merely repeated, "Far away, sir, to home. No family." The combination of the oppressive heat and the memory of his waiting customers at the resort began to wear on Charlie's patience. His voice took on an edge of frustration as he tried again to extract more specific information from the girl. "Zuri, I can't help you if you don't tell me where you're going. Do you have any idea of an address or even a neighborhood? Any family contact number that can help you?" Zuri remained silent, her fingers tightening around her white cane. The situation seemed increasingly complicated with each passing moment, and Charlie felt sweat beading on his forehead, as much from stress as from the heat. As Charlie shifted his weight, considering his next move, he noticed something promising. An ID tag hanging from a cord around Zuri's neck, partially tucked behind her chest. The discovery offered a potential solution to the mystery of her identity and proper destination. Without thinking, Charlie reached for the ID tag, but Zuri reacted immediately, swatting his hand away with surprising accuracy, despite her lack of eyes. She continued walking with her stick, trying to create distance between them. Charlie, now committed to helping, followed persistently while attempting to read the tag. "Zuri, wait, I'm just trying to help. That tag might tell us where you belong," Charlie called out, his voice a mix of concern and frustration. Despite Zuri's resistance, Charlie managed to glimpse the information on her ID tag. She was from a local orphanage. The location was familiar to him, not far from their current position. This knowledge shifted his approach entirely, giving him a concrete destination to suggest. Charlie offered to drive her back to the orphanage, framing it as a question about whether she was lost and wanted to return home. Zuri's response remained firm. "Home not there. Home far away." When he suggested involving the police as an alternative, Zuri quickly explained that they would simply return her to the orphanage. Her voice carried a note of desperation as she begged him to understand. The intensity of her plea affected Charlie more than he expected, stirring memories of the lonely boy he once tried to help. Exhausted by the circular conversation, Charlie made a decisive choice. "Fine, I'll take you home. Far away, wherever it is," he declared, his voice carrying both resignation and concern. To his surprise, Zuri agreed to follow him to the cab, though her body language remained guarded. As they walked towards his taxi, Charlie realized he had completely forgotten about getting change for his waiting customers. He glanced at his watch, noting the time that had passed, and felt a pang of guilt. But looking at Zuri, carefully making her way with her cane, he knew he couldn't abandon her now. He'd have to figure out the change situation later. Charlie helped Zuri into the back seat of his taxi, making sure she was comfortable before closing the door. As he settled into the driver's seat, he took a deep breath, wondering what he had gotten himself into. The meter remained off as he pulled out of the parking lot, heading in the direction Zuri had indicated as far away. Just as Charlie turned the key in the ignition, Zuri spoke up from the back seat. "Mr. Charlie, I'm hungry. Can we get pizza?" The timing of her request caught Charlie off guard, adding another complication to his already delayed schedule. He glanced at the clock on his dashboard, acutely aware of the tourist family's change still waiting to be delivered, and his shift ticking away. "Pizza? Now?" Charlie asked, unable to keep the exasperation from his voice. "Zuri, we really should get you back to wherever it is you're going, far away." But something in Zuri's demeanor made him hesitate to refuse outright. Her face, despite its unusual smoothness where eyes should be, seemed to convey a mixture of hope and hunger that tugged at Charlie's conscience. Making what he later recognized as a reckless decision, Charlie agreed to the detour. He navigated through the afternoon streets, scanning for a pizza place while conscious of his growing list of obligations. After a few minutes of driving, Charlie spotted a suitable establishment. He parked the taxi and helped Zuri from the car, guiding her carefully across the sidewalk and into the pizzeria. The cool air inside was a welcome relief from the oppressive heat outside. "All right, Zuri," Charlie said, standing with her at the counter. "What kind of pizza do you want?" Zuri made her selection with surprising confidence, 2 slices of cheese pizza. As the cashier rang up the order, Zuri admitted quietly, "I don't have any money." Charlie couldn't suppress a gruff complaint, though it was more from frustration with himself than with her. "Of course you don't," he muttered, reaching for his wallet. Despite his misgivings, Charlie found himself pulling out the tourist's $100 bill to pay for the pizza. The transaction felt like crossing a point of no return. The simple task of getting change had evolved into something far more complicated. He shoved the change into his wallet, still holding on to the idea of returning it to the resort later. Back in the taxi, Zuri settled with her pizza, the aroma filling the car. Charlie's curiosity got the better of him. "Why did you order 2 slices?" he asked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. Zuri's response carried a touching thoughtfulness that contradicted her earlier evasiveness. "One's for my friend," she explained between bites. "At the orphanage. They don't get treats very often." Her words struck Charlie, reminding him of the lonely boy he once tried to help. He found himself negotiating with Zuri, promising to deliver the remaining slice to her friends at the orphanage after driving her home. As they drove, Charlie's desperation to resolve the situation grew. He made a calculated decision. He'd turn on the fare meter and drive Zuri back to the orphanage without telling her. He reasoned that her blindness would prevent her from recognizing the route, but something about her earlier sharpness nagged at him, filling him with doubt. Questions circled his mind. Why was she alone on the street? Had she escaped from the orphanage? When she spoke of home far away, did she mean the orphanage, or was she imagining somewhere else? Maybe she'd been separated from a group outing, a walk or a tour. The uncertainty unsettled him, and as he glanced at her small, calm face, he wondered just how much she knew of his intentions. The uneaten pizza slice lay on the armrest between the front and back seats, a silent witness to his moral struggle. Charlie wrestled with a pang of guilt over his deception, the innocent trust of the girl beside him making it harder to justify his plan. The memory of a past choice, one where he'd helped a lonely child without hesitation, resurfaced, drawing an uncomfortable parallel to his current predicament. He tried to push it aside, but the feeling clung to him, making each mile feel heavier. As Charlie's taxi neared their destination, Zuri remained quiet, having finished her first slice of pizza. The familiar buildings of the neighborhood began to appear, and Charlie felt a mixture of relief and guilt as the orphanage came into view. The facade of the building looked deceivingly pleasant in the afternoon light, its brick exterior and manicured lawn giving no hint of the turmoil Charlie was about to encounter. Just as Charlie helped Zuri from the car, her entire demeanor changed. Her body tensed, and her voice took on an edge of betrayal as she demanded, "Why have you brought me back to the orphanage? You said you would drive me home." The accusation cut through the air, leaving Charlie momentarily speechless. His surprise at her awareness showed in his voice as he asked, "How did you know where we are?" Zuri's response revealed an unexpected depth to her capabilities. "I may not have eyes, but my other senses are heightened," she explained, her voice carrying both pride and bitterness. "I can smell the particular scent of the grounds, feel the change in the air. This place, it's unmistakable to me. But I don't know where to drive you. Far away is not a place. I just can't drive you and drop you at a random place. I don't want to be here. I want to go home, home far, far away." Before Charlie could formulate a response, the commotion attracted attention from inside. Several orphanage staff members emerged, their expressions showing recognition rather than surprise at Zuri's presence. They approached quickly, thanking Charlie profusely for returning her. "This isn't her first escape attempt," one of the staff members said casually. as if discussing a minor inconvenience rather than a child's desperate bid for freedom. Despite her limitations, she's proven remarkably adept at slipping away. This little weasel's smart, I tell you. Quick and smart. I can see that about her, Charlie said, and then, still reeling from the rapid turn of events, he suddenly remembered his running meter. About the taxi fare, he began, addressing the staff. Since I brought her back, I think it's only fair that the orphanage covers the cost. The staff's immediate rejection of responsibility triggered an increasingly heated argument. We didn't call for a taxi, one of them said dismissively. How you came to transport her is not our concern. Charlie felt his frustration mounting. Look, he said, his voice rising. Your security clearly isn't up to par if a blind child can just walk out. The least you could do is cover the transportation cost of returning her safely. The staff's dismissive attitude only fueled Charlie's anger. Their argument grew more intense until one staff member, a stern-faced woman, approached him and abruptly declared all her staff had duties to attend to inside. This discussion is over, she said flatly, turning her back on Charlie. Fuming from the encounter, Charlie returned to his taxi, slamming the door with more force than necessary. The sound echoed through the quiet street as he checked his phone, finding a message from an unknown foreign number, the tourist asking about his money. Charlie quickly called the tourist back, assuring him he hadn't absconded with the money. Yeah, I'm on my way. I'll get your change back to you within the next 30 minutes, I promise. He explained about running an errand but promised to return soon. The tourist's voice was tense with frustration as he threatened to call the taxi company and report Charlie if he didn't deliver the change in the next 30 minutes. As the call ended, Charlie noticed the forgotten pizza box. The sight of it reminded him of Zuri's thoughtfulness in saving a slice for her friends and his promise to deliver it. Despite his irritation, he couldn't bring himself to leave without fulfilling that small promise. Ah, bugger, he complained to himself. Grabbing the pizza box, Charlie walked back to the front entrance of the orphanage. His repeated knocks on the front door went unanswered. Peering through the small square window in the door revealed an empty reception area. The silence felt unusual for an institution housing children. As he was about to leave, a strange mixture of sounds caught his attention. Laughter mingled with crying, coming from somewhere around the building. The incongruity of the sounds sent a chill down Charlie's spine, despite the afternoon heat. Driven by curiosity and growing concern, Charlie circled the orphanage's perimeter. He discovered a back entrance and was about to investigate when the door suddenly burst open. Quick reflexes allowed him to duck behind a corner, concealing himself as a group emerged into the yard. The scene that unfolded before Charlie was horrific, a stark contrast to the pleasant facade the orphanage presented to the world. 5 staff members, including the woman he had argued with earlier, gathered with 10 disabled children in the backyard. The staff's demeanor had changed completely from their earlier professional facade, revealing a cruel and sadistic nature that made Charlie's blood run cold. They formed a circle with the children gathered to one side, their faces showing varying degrees of fear and resignation. Charlie watched in stunned silence as they called forward a boy named Armin in his wheelchair. The woman, now identified as Mom Haley, cruelly ordered Armin to stand, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "Come on, Armin," she taunted. "Show us how well you can walk today." Charlie's heart sank as he watched the boy struggle, knowing the task was impossible for him. When Armin inevitably fell, unable to support himself, the staff laughed uproariously, some even pulling out their phones to record the moment. "Look at our little cat," one of the male staff members jeered. "Crawl for us, kitty." To Charlie's horror, they forced Armin to crawl on the ground, laughing as he struggled to move. Then, in a final act of humiliation, they produced a plate of fish bones and ordered him to eat them off the dirty ground. "Cats love fish, don't they?" Haley said, her voice sickeningly sweet. "Eat up, little kitty." Charlie watched, his fists clenched in helpless rage, as Armin choked and gagged on the bones before they roughly returned him to his wheelchair. Just when Charlie thought it couldn't get worse, they called Zuri to the center. His heart sank as he recognized the girl he had tried to help earlier. The staff confiscated her walking stick and threw it on the ground, leaving her vulnerable and disoriented in the middle of their cruel circle. Haley approached with a marker, a malicious grin on her face. "Let's give our little blind girl some eyes, shall we?" she announced to the group's amusement. With swift, cruel strokes, she drew crude eyes on Zuri's smooth face where her eye sockets should be. Not content with this humiliation, Haley added demeaning dog features to Zuri's cheeks, transforming her face into a grotesque caricature. "Now be a good little doggy," Haley commanded, her voice filled with false cheer. "Bury this bone for us." Charlie watched in horror as they forced a chicken bone into Zuri's hand and demanded she bury it in the soil with her bare hands. The staff's laughter echoed across the yard, a chilling soundtrack to the cruel spectacle. Unable to watch any longer, Charlie emerged from his hiding place. His heart pounded with a mixture of fear and determination as he strode purposefully toward the group. Without a word, he reached for Zuri, grasping her arm while retrieving her walking stick from the ground. The sudden interruption created an immediate hush over the gathering, the staff's laughter dying in their throats. Haley's reaction was immediate and aggressive. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded, her voice sharp with anger. "This is private property. Leave immediately." Charlie's response was equally forceful. "What you're doing is evil and disgusting," he said, his voice shaking with barely contained rage. "These are children, not animals for your amusement. Your responsibility is to care for them, not humiliate them." The other staff members shifted uncomfortably, their phones still recording but now pointed toward the ground. Some looked ashamed, while others seemed more concerned with the potential consequences of being caught. Haley's defense was chilling in its conviction. "You don't understand," she insisted, her voice taking on a righteous tone. "We're not toying with them. This is necessary punishment. Zuri keeps trying to escape and Armin helps her. Disabled children require harsher discipline when they misbehave. That's how they learn to overcome their self-pity and entitlement." "If anyone's here feeling entitled, it's you, not the children." Charlie pointed his finger, his face turning red from anger, and he could feel the heat building up on his neck. During the confrontation, Zuri recognized Charlie's voice. Her face lit up with hope as she mentioned she could smell the pizza he brought back. This small moment of connection strengthened Charlie's resolve to protect her and the other children. Haley's tactics shifted as she realized the severity of the situation. She reached into her pocket and threw cash on the ground, $300 in crisp bills. "Take it," she said, her voice low and urgent. "Take the money and forget what you've seen here. It's more than fair compensation for your trouble." Charlie crouched to retrieve the money, using the motion to get closer to Zuri. Speaking in a whisper that Haley couldn't hear, he asked, "Zuri, can you run?" When she nodded, he gave her specific instructions. "When I say go, run straight in the direction I push you. Try to find my car. There's a big button near the AC. I want you to push that button. Can you do that?" Zuri didn't hesitate to say yes, and Charlie marveled at her bravery, despite her physical limitations. The plan formed quickly in his mind as he pretended to consider Haley's offer. Standing up with the money in his hand, Charlie knew he had only one chance to make this work. He had to create a distraction that would give Zuri the best chance of escape. Charlie's mind raced as he formulated his plan. He needed to create a distraction that would allow Zuri to escape, while also ensuring the safety of the other children. With a deep breath, he made his move. "You know what?" Charlie said loudly, addressing Haley and the other staff members. "I think you're right. I'll take the cash, deliver this pizza to Armin. He looks like he could use some real food after those fish bones." Charlie rolled the cash into his pocket. As he spoke, Charlie moved towards Armin, pizza box in hand. Haley immediately stepped in his path, her face contorted with anger. "Don't you dare approach any of these children," she hissed. "They're mine." The confrontation drew the attention of the other staff members, creating the distraction Charlie needed. In one swift motion, he grabbed Zuri's arm and thrusted her in the direction of his taxi. "Run! Straight!" Charlie shouted. Simultaneously, he pressed the button on his key fob, unlocking the cab and hoping that Zuri could catch the sound of the doors unlocking. The scene erupted into chaos. Zuri's sprint toward the taxi with her cane amazed Charlie with its speed and accuracy. The other children, sensing an opportunity to help, deliberately impeded the staff's pursuit. Some called out directions to Zuri, while others pretended to trip or fall in the path of the adults. Haley, realizing what was happening, charged after Zuri with surprising speed. Charlie, without hesitation, tackled her from behind, using his body to prevent her from reaching the girl. The two of them hit the ground hard, the impact knocking the wind out of Charlie's lungs. "You have no idea what you're doing," Haley screamed, struggling against Charlie's grip. "Those children need us. They have nowhere else to go." Charlie held on tight even as Haley's nails raked across his arms. "They need protection from you," he grunted, using all his strength to keep her pinned. The other staff members quickly joined the fray, pulling Charlie away from Haley. Fists and feet flew as they began to beat him, their faces twisted with rage and fear. Despite the pain of their blows, Charlie maintained his position between them and the taxi, buying time for Zuri to reach safety. Through the haze of the struggle, Charlie caught glimpses of Zuri making her way to his cab. He silently urged her on, praying she would find the SOS button he had mentioned. Each second felt like an eternity as the blows rained down on him. Just when Charlie thought he couldn't take any more, he heard it, the faint but unmistakable sound of the SOS button being activated. A wave of relief washed over him, even as another punch connected with his jaw. He knew help was on the way. The staff, unaware of the silent alarm, continued their assault. Charlie curled into a protective ball, no longer needing to fight back. He had accomplished his goal. Zuri was safe and help was coming. Now he just needed to endure until the authorities arrived. As he lay there, tasting blood in his mouth and feeling the ache of forming bruises, Charlie thought about the long chain of events that had led to this moment. From a simple taxi fare to uncovering a horrific secret, it had been a day unlike any other in his life. And it wasn't over yet. The sound of approaching sirens cut through the air, causing the staff to freeze in their tracks. The cavalry was arriving, and with it, the promise of justice for the children who had suffered for so long. The wail of sirens grew louder, heralding the approach of multiple police vehicles. Their silent arrival, lights flashing but sirens cut, spoke to the seriousness of the SOS signal. Officers poured out of the cars, their movements swift and coordinated, suggesting experience with similar situations. The sight of uniformed officers caused the staff to immediately cease their assault on Charlie. Some raised their hands in surrender, while others stood frozen in shock, the reality of their situation sinking in. Paramedics rushed to tend to Charlie's injuries, carefully helping him to his feet. Despite the pain radiating through his body, Charlie remained focused on ensuring the children's safety. His eyes darted around, searching for Armin and the other kids. "The children," he managed to say through swollen lips. "Please make sure they're safe. There's a girl in my cab. She's saved there." The officers quickly took control of the scene, separating the staff members and securing the area. Charlie watched with a mixture of relief and concern as officers approached his taxi, where Zuri remained locked inside. One of the officers, a kind-faced woman, gently coaxed Zuri out of the vehicle. "It's okay, sweetheart," she said softly. "You're safe now. Can you tell me your name?" As Zuri hesitantly emerged, Charlie felt a wave of emotion wash over him. Despite the pain of his injuries, he felt a sense of triumph seeing her safe and the other children being tended to by caring professionals. The police wasted no time in collecting evidence. They discovered the incriminating videos on the staff's phones, scrolling through hundreds of recordings showing systematic abuse of the children. The officers' expressions grew grimmer with each new piece of evidence they uncovered. "This goes beyond simple abuse," one officer murmured to his colleague. "These videos, they were being sold on the dark web for profit. One of our teams at the station is already handling a similar case." The revelation sent a chill down Charlie's spine. The sheer depravity of the staff was horrifying enough, but the thought that there were people out there who found joy in watching these videos made his stomach churn with disgust. He stood silently, his fists clenched, as Haley and her colleagues were handcuffed and escorted to the waiting police vehicles. Their once commanding presence was now reduced to nothing. Some loudly protested their innocence, while others maintained a sullen, defeated silence. While some officers handled the arrest of the staff members, others worked to coordinate with child services for the children's immediate care and relocation. An officer approached Charlie, notepad in hand. "Sir, we're going to need a detailed statement from you," he said. "Can you tell us exactly what happened here today?" Charlie nodded, wincing slightly at the movement. He began recounting the events of the day, starting with his encounter with Zuri at the convenience store. As he spoke, he realized how close he had come to simply driving away and leaving her there. The thought made him shudder. He described the scene he had witnessed in the backyard, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. The officer listened intently, jotting down notes and occasionally asking for clarification. As Charlie finished his statement, he couldn't help but ask, "What's going to happen to the children now?" The officer's face softened slightly. "They'll be moved to a safer facility immediately," he assured Charlie. "Child services will ensure they receive proper care and support." Charlie nodded, though he couldn't help but wonder about their future. Would they find loving homes? Would they be able to overcome the trauma they had endured? These questions weighed heavily on his mind as he watched the children being gently led to waiting vehicles. As the chaos of the scene began to settle, Charlie felt a mixture of exhaustion and relief wash over him. The day had taken an unexpected and harrowing turn, but in the end, he had made a difference. The thought brought a small smile to his bruised face, despite the pain. As the chaos began to settle, Charlie noticed Zuri approaching him. Her movements were more confident now that she had her walking stick back, navigating the unfamiliar terrain with surprising ease. When she reached him, she wrapped her arms around him in a tight hug, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, Mr. Charlie," Zuri said, her voice muffled against his shirt. "You saved us. You're the first grown-up who ever helped us." Charlie felt a lump form in his throat, overwhelmed by the girl's gratitude and the weight of what she had endured. He gently patted her back, mindful of his own injuries. "You're very brave, Zuri," he said softly. "You helped save yourself and your friends, too." As they stood there, Charlie became acutely aware of the attention they were attracting. Nearby officers and paramedics watched the emotional scene, some wiping away tears of their own. It was a moment of raw humanity amidst the clinical process of evidence gathering and arrests. Zuri pulled back slightly, her face turned up towards Charlie's voice. "Mr. Charlie," she said hesitantly, "can I become your driving companion? I promise I'll be good, and I won't ask you to pay for my food." The request broke Charlie's heart. He knew he couldn't make such a promise, no matter how much he wanted to help her. "I'm sorry, Zuri," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "There are rules about who can ride in taxis, but I promise I'll do everything I can to make sure you and your friends are taken care of." Zuri's face fell slightly, but she nodded in understanding. Charlie, struck by a sudden idea, reached into his pocket and pulled out one of the $100 bills Haley had thrown at him earlier. He pressed it into Zuri's hand along with his business card. "Keep these safe," he instructed her. "The money is for you to use when you need it. Keep it safe and secured, and my card has my number on it. If you ever need help, you can call me." Zuri's fingers closed around the items, a small smile forming on her face. "I'll keep them forever," she promised. Charlie knew he was making a potentially reckless promise, but he couldn't help himself. "Zuri," he said softly, "I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you have a good home. I can't make any guarantees, but I'm going to try to foster you once I get a better job. Would you like that?" Zuri's face lit up with hope. "Really? You'd do that for me?" Charlie nodded, then remembered she couldn't see the gesture. "Yes," he said firmly. "I promise I'll try my best." As they stood there, Charlie noticed Zuri still clutching the pizza box. He gently reminded her, Didn't you want to share that last slice with Armin? Zuri's face brightened at the reminder. Oh yes, can we give it to him now? Charlie guided Zuri towards where Armin sat in his wheelchair, surrounded by caring paramedics. As they approached, Armin looked up, his face a mixture of fear and hope. Armin, Zuri called out, I saved you a slice of pizza just like I promised. The boy's face lit up as Zuri carefully handed him the slice. Despite the chaos around them, this simple act of kindness provided a moment of normalcy. Charlie watched as Armin ate the pizza with evident joy, realizing how such a small gesture could mean so much in the face of trauma. As the children were prepared for transport to their temporary housing, Charlie drove away from the orphanage with a heavy heart, his face and body aching from the confrontation. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the streets of Albuquerque as he navigated back towards the resort. At a red light, he checked his phone, finding multiple missed calls and messages. There was a complaint from the tourist about the delayed change and a stern message from the taxi company's dispatch. Charlie, where have you been? We've got a customer threatening to report us to the Better Business Bureau. And now we're getting calls about one of our cabs being involved in some kind of police incident. What's going on? Charlie tried to explain, his voice weary. I know this sounds unbelievable, but I uncovered a child abuse ring at an orphanage. The police are involved, and I had to act quickly to help the children. There was a long pause before the dispatcher spoke again, her voice now cold and professional. Charlie, I don't know what kind of story you're trying to spin. It doesn't just sound unbelievable, it's ridiculous, and this is completely unacceptable. You abandoned a fare, went off-grid for hours, and now there's a police report involving your cab. This is grounds for immediate suspension. But I can explain, Charlie started, but the dispatcher cut him off. Save it for management. You're to finish your current fare immediately, then return the cab to the lot. Your suspension starts as soon as you clock out. We'll be conducting a full investigation into today's events. The call ended abruptly, leaving Charlie feeling even more deflated. He realized the complexity of the situation he now faced, both professionally and personally. As Charlie navigated back to the resort, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the building's facade. He called the tourist, who directed him to the pool area. The contrast between the carefree resort atmosphere and his recent experience at the orphanage struck Charlie deeply. Walking through the resort to meet the tourist, Charlie passed families enjoying their vacations. Each happy child he saw reminded him of the orphanage children, creating a bittersweet awareness of the disparities in life. The chlorine smell from the pool mingled with the lingering scent of antiseptic from his treated wounds. He found the tourist lounging by the pool, drink in hand, surrounded by his family. The man's relaxed demeanor shifted to one of annoyance as he saw Charlie approach. Finally, the tourist said, sitting up straighter in his chair. Do you realize how long we've been waiting? And gosh, what happened to your face? Charlie, too exhausted to explain the full story, simply handed over the change. I'm very sorry for the delay, sir. There was an unexpected situation I had to deal with. The tourist seemed about to launch into a tirade, but something in Charlie's battered appearance made him hesitate. Instead, he nodded curtly, accepting the money. Well, I hope it was worth potentially losing your job over, he said, his tone a mixture of curiosity and judgment. Charlie paused, considering his response carefully. Sir, he said, his voice low and serious, I know I've inconvenienced you today, and for that, I'm truly sorry. But please, if you take anything from this interaction, let it be this. Cherish your family. Love your children. You have no idea how lucky you are. The tourist's eyes widened slightly at the intensity in Charlie's voice. He nodded slowly, glancing at his own children playing in the pool. I will, he promised, his anger seemingly dissipating. As Charlie made his way back through the resort lobby, he felt the accumulated weight of the day's events pressing down on him. His decision to help Zuri, despite the personal cost, reminded him of his earlier career-ending choice to help another child in need. This time, however, the consequences felt worth the sacrifice, even as he faced an uncertain professional future. Charlie returned his taxi to the company lot, parking it with careful precision despite his exhaustion. The familiar routine of logging out and submitting his paperwork felt different now, marked by a sense of completion rather than defeat. As he handed over his keys to the night dispatcher, he couldn't help but feel that this might be the last time he did so. The dispatcher, noticing Charlie's battered appearance, asked with concern, "Are you sure you don't need a ride to the hospital?" Charlie shook his head. "No, I'm all right, just need some rest. I'll be in tomorrow to give a full report to management." As he walked away from the taxi lot, Charlie felt a strange mix of emotions. The day had been one of the most challenging of his life, but also one of the most meaningful. He had made a difference, possibly saved lives, and in doing so, had rediscovered a part of himself he thought he had lost. His feet carried him almost of their own accord back to the pizza place he had visited with Zuri earlier that day. As he approached the familiar storefront, he realized he was hungry. He hadn't eaten since that morning before his shift began. Entering the pizza place, the aroma of fresh-baked dough and melted cheese enveloped him. He ordered 2 slices, just like Zuri, then sat at a small table near the window, watching the world go by outside as he waited. As he ate, Charlie's mind wandered to the future. He knew he couldn't continue as a taxi driver, not after today. The thought of returning to the monotony of ferrying passengers around the city felt hollow now. But what could he do instead? His thoughts turned to Zuri and the other children from the orphanage. He had made a promise, one he intended to keep. But to do that, he would need a more stable job, a better income. He would need to prove he could provide a safe and nurturing home. As he finished his pizza, Charlie felt a sense of purpose settling over him. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years he felt truly motivated. He had a goal, a reason to push forward and improve his life. Leaving the pizza place, Charlie stepped out into the cooling evening air. The sun was setting, painting the Albuquerque sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple. It was the end of one of the most extraordinary days of his life, but it also felt like a beginning. The streets of Albuquerque stretched out before him, familiar, yet somehow new. Charlie realized that his perspective had shifted. The city was no longer just a maze of streets to navigate, but a community filled with people who might need help, children who might need protection. If you like this story of Zuri and Charlie, I've handpicked another one I know you'll love. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it next.